Now, before we plunge into festive spirits and historical hangovers, a huge thanks to our sponsor for this Christmas special, which is Wild Market, the online farmers market that's making food feel exciting again.
It's proper food made by real people, the kind of food you can get your teeth into. We're really enthusiastic Wild Market customers here.
I mean, genuinely, of course, we might be sponsored by all sorts of people and we'd smile sweet and go, it's wonderful. Wild Market really is very, very good. It is the future of online farmers markets, I think.
Yeah, they send everything to you in a box, and it is the highlight of the week when a Wild Market box arrives. It's like Christmas every week, and I get so excited. My wife absolutely loves it. The whole process is ridiculously easy, thanks to the Wild app. Wild is a funny spelling.
Yeah.
W-Y-L-D-E. It's like a sort of old Anglo-Saxon spelling.
Yeah.
So the Wild app, which makes shopping feel like joining a joyful underground food movement.
I mean, that's what Wild does so well. It connects you direct to these small independent producers, you know, rather than the great faceless supermarkets and all the rest of it. They have their advantages, supermarkets, but no, I like dealing direct with these small and wonderful producers. And, you know, the people who make it and with the people who love eating it.
And it works very, very, very easily. The market opens on Friday at 5 p.m. and that's the sort of the date in the week. It's like a little bell rings, market is open, and then you can start shopping.
And that's what you do. So you browse, and if you're like us, you get very excited. It's like sort of...
They've got clams this week.
I saw it, clams or hot sauces, all sorts of stuff. And you can sort of fiddle around and add to your list. And then basically, on Wednesday at midday, the market closes. So that's it. You know, you've got to get your order in before then. And then, of course, that's all pulled together by the wonderful people at Wild Market. And it is delivered on Friday, just in time for some weekend joyous eating and cooking.
Delivery is all over mainland Britain, and it arrives in one convenient box, which is all beautifully packed. Everything always arrives with all these like chiller packs and things. Everything arrives in tip-top condition.
So if you want food, I'll go straight to camera here, very, very sort of, you know, serious. If you want food that is packed with flavour and is made by producers you can trust and you know where your food is coming from, Wild Market, that's your baby.
It's time to reconnect with great producers. It's time to put real pleasure back into food. It's time to go wild.
Time to go wild. And thank you to Wild Market. Thank you very much for sponsoring. You go to Wild Market to find out more. And that, as Henry has pointed out, is W-Y-L-D-E. It is the oldie English spelling of wild rather than the new one. And it's W-Y-L-D-E .market to sign up or download the app. And now, anyway, on with our Intoxicating History Christmas special.
I'm in the Cornwallis this evening, enjoying a half pint of extra strength lager and a small schooner of Bristol Cream sherry. For any impoverished, committed boozer, this combination will work wonders, I guarantee. You don't want to drink another drop of alcohol and you sleep like a baby. So that's from one of our favourite novels, Any Human Heart by William Boyd, and it's a little hymn to the joys of sherry. And we've got a real winter warmer of a show for you.
We have indeed. I mean, we've just been banging on about Any Human Heart. It really is, you know, Logan Mountstuart is a fascinating and brilliant but rich and beautifully written. And just thinking about it gets me excited. But just thinking about sherry, does that put you in the mood for Christmas?
It really does. And we've got a bottle of the ultimate Christmas sherry, which we're going to be diving into later, Harvey's Bristol Cream.
And have we got to that point now that, you know, in sherry became very cool in the 90s and 2000s, the Fino, the Manzanilla, all these wonderful dry, bone-dry sherries. And poor old Bristol Cream that was part of all of our Christmases for so long seems to have disappeared, you know. So is it coming back? Is it retro cool?
Well, we'll come on to that, but I suppose we have to announce that this is what we're doing.
Yes, of course. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes,
we're back.
Yay!
Intoxicating History Christmas special with our friends at Wild Market.
Yeah, very, very exciting. And what do we? So obviously it's booze and Christmas booze. So we'll be skipping through all manner of sherry, champagne, eggnog.
Yeah, we're looking at the drinks of Christmas, and we're also looking at Christmas films. So really, what we're going to do is we're going to have a hell of a lot to drink, and then we're going to fall asleep on the sofa in front of Casablanca. But not literally, because that would be a really boring podcast, just us snoring.
No, or Where Eagles Dare, or a classic Roger Moore, you know. sort of octopusy, A View to a Kill, even Moonraker, underrated. But yes, there's something wonderful about getting semi-sozzled at Christmas and falling asleep where your children laugh at you, your tummy's hanging out and you're snoring. So that's Christmas.
Because, I mean, last time we met up, we were in the basking in the warmth of Porto, weren't we?
Well, it was a warmth and slight rain of Porto, wasn't it?
Yeah.
One day it was warm, the other day. That was 2 seasons ago. Of course, we've traversed the world a few times. Well, maybe not literally, but metaphorically. It's very nice to be sitting here talking with you about booze again, and especially Christmas, because Christmas. Thank God this isn't a podcast about Christmas food, because Christmas food is the most dreary feast of all time. Garsy turkey, mince pies, Christmas pudding, turgid Victorian muck. But booze, now we're talking.
Should we kick off with a glass of champagne? So it's the only time of the year when it's acceptable to have a glass of champagne.
After you brush your teeth.
Yeah, you can still taste the toothpaste.
Yeah,
9:30, glass of champagne with your toast and marmalade. Or, I mean, what do you have for breakfast on Christmas? Do you have a proper breakfast?
Well, it's usually the children, despite being 18 and 15, are still up at 5:30, 6 o'clock to open their stockings,
Right.
So Father Christmas has been in. So by about 8 o'clock, I'm actually gagging for a drink, So yes, but I would like to pretend that I have this very sort of elaborate Christmas breakfast and sort of, scrambled eggs and smoked salmon and caviar. But no, because we know we're going to be eating so much all day that the kids have cereal or fried eggs and stuff. I pick probably ham. There's always a ham around us. And yeah, what do you have?
Well, last year we actually had your kedgeree from
did you?
your wonderful
fantastic. Did it work?
Cooking the Crown. We had it the night before, so we had it on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And then there was loads left for breakfast. So we all had wonderful kedgeree. So it was actually the best Christmas breakfast ever.
Oh, woohoo! No salmon in the kedgeree, just smoked haddock.
It's a great recipe. So anyway, champagne. So what's really interesting about the kind of tradition of having champagne on Christmas Day is that champagne used to be a very different kind of wine. So we had that episode where we looked at champagne and how Veuve Clicquot and Louis Pasteur and all these very clever French people kind of turned this rather unreliable wine into the sort of fizz we know today. The funny thing is, most of the time, until quite recently, it would have been sweet.
Really?
So the Russians were the biggest customers for champagne. So Veuve Clicquot, Louis Roederer, they all made wine for the Russian market.
And is that true, just to jump in, that Cristal was made in see-through bottles so the Tsar and his acolytes and his sort of servant could see whether it had been tampered with or poisoned, or was that an urban myth?
This is the story.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't actually gone through the archives of Imperial Russia, but also Cristal, which is the kind of posh Roederer one, doesn't have a punt, doesn't have a hole in the bottom.
Why?
Well, apparently, and I'm not so sure how true this is, it's so that you can't hide a bomb in it. So the Tsar was worried about
what size, unless you had a Nebuchadnezzar, you're going to have bombs. I mean, it might be, what sort of size bomb would you be?
I just don't think in 19th century Russia they had the technology to make a bomb, the size of a walnut.
There were blokes with sort of masks on with round balls and they chucked it into. That's what anarchists did. They chucked round bombs into crowds and stuff.
It's a good story. I'd have to kind of talk to a Russian historian and find out how true it is. But they did drink it very, very sweet. So it had something like 300 grams of sugar in. So that's much sweeter than port. And they used to sometimes used to fortify it with brandy, or even yellow chartreuse, the drink made by the monk.
That's very trendy at the moment, and it's running out, apparently. I heard that there's a yellow chartreuse. I mean, this is a niche problem, but I will admit.
There is a chartreuse,
There's a chartreuse shortage. Those monks aren't working hard enough.
Yeah, it's because the Americans, they tend to get to things slightly late, like wars and stuff. They've just a lot of them have discovered chartreuse. So anyway, running out of chartreuse.
There's a run of chartreuse.
So in the 19th century, champagne would have been sweet, and it would have actually been more like a sort of sparkling sherry than the drink that we know today.
So when we're reading, as we do endlessly, Anna Karenina and all the rest of that, Tolstoy, and they're always having those feasts with lots of champagne, that would have been a very sweet champagne.
Very, very sweet. It would have been like a sort of, a dessert wine.
Wow.
And then something sort of odd happened in the mid-19th century. Britain was becoming incredibly wealthy, the Industrial Revolution. You had this rising middle class, places like London and Manchester and Glasgow and, all these kind of mercantile cities had this rising middle class. And they were drinking champagne, but the problem was that the English already had lots of nice sweet wines. You know, they had Madeira and port and Sauterne and stuff, hock. So they didn't really need one more sweet wine. So there was one enterprising wine merchant who began importing dry stuff. So he'd gone out to Epinay and he tasted this unsweetened champagne, brut, bone dry. So just, 6-10 grams of sugar in.
And that, going back to Epinay, that would have been drunk by the French. But they had a taste, did they?
I don't think they did. No, because the French actually, to this day, drink slightly sweeter champagne than we do. So I think this must have been just something for the Champenois, the people who made it. So there was this chap called Monsieur Brune, or Mr. Brune, because he was English.
Yeah.
And he imported it, and it didn't do very well. But then a few years later, 1865, that's when we developed this taste for dry champagne. And it's all to do with changes in how people were eating. So you'll know about this.
Well, exactly. It was moving the Georgians. It was moving across from... the Georgians are a nightmare to do because they ate at very strange times. The meal times were very fluid. And then it started to move towards... The Victorians moved towards... they moved from à la Francais to à la Russe. So serving everything together on the table and moving to the style of, course by course. And that happened during Victoria's reign. But that made a difference to
that made a difference, and champagne was the perfect thing to have with the savoury courses. And it would be quite slightly different to modern champagne. It would have been made with more black grapes, so it would have been richer. So if you ever have like a Blanc de Noir or Paul Roger, like the sort of Winston Churchill or something, which is very kind of heavy, sort of big, sort of black grape heavy champagne, and that's what people were drinking. So have you ever read? What's his name? I've got a note here. Lieutenant Colonel Newnham Davis.
Well, you were asking about him. I think I've got it, because obviously he was a great script. I think he also wrote an Indian cookbook, and I wasn't sure. I think I have it somewhere.
No, he did, because he was out in India for a long time.
And it's called, and it's absolutely brilliant. But then when you sent me that WhatsApp last week, I looked into it, and you could go down a rabbit hole. He's fantastic, very forthright in his opinions. But he's an equivalent, I suppose, of a... Well, I don't know who it was. I suppose not really an A. Gill, but do you know what I mean? He was very prolific. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
he wrote a lot for the Strand. And
the Pall Mall Gazette. He was like the first restaurant reviewer.
Yeah.
And he was always he'd always seem to be going out with other people's wives to the Savoy or Simpsons in the Strand and stuff. And what they would always order would be Pommery or Perret-Jouet or something like that, because it was the perfect thing to go with these courses that came out, as you said, à la Russe. So
à la Russe,
starter,
exactly,
fish course. And it sort of went with everything. And also, the great thing about champagne, whereas with Bordeaux, you had to sort of understand vintages, and with Burgundy, you had, Grand Crus, and it was all very, very complicated. With champagne, you had the big adverts and stuff. So it was like, Pommery, I like Pommery.
Yeah.
And you would just order Pommery. So even though it was expensive, it was easy to understand, and you wouldn't have the sommelier kind of laughing at you for ordering the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Because you'd ordered champagne. It was always the right thing to order.
And back in those days, was it all been vintage, or was there just a normal, would you have only bought vintage champagne?
I think it was all vintage. I think non-vintage came in a lot later. But it was quite a sort of, even though it was expensive, it was quite a sort of aspirational thing. So if you ever read Diary of a Nobody...
It is a book I read, along with Naples 44, a book I read every year. Mr. Pooter, no one makes me laugh more in the whole world than Mr. Pooter and his errant son.
Yes.
It is one of the funniest books about class and about Britishness ever. The Grossmith Brothers.
The Grossmith Brothers. So it's about a kind of social climbing clerk in 19th century London.
And the new middle class.
And the new middle class. And his son Lupin and his friends coming and going.
And what about my favourite bit is when Mr. Pooter, he goes to the Lord Mayor's banquet, and they report it in the newspaper, and they keep spelling it sort of Luter or Muter, and he gets more and more furious, because this is a great moment, and he's rather disappointed to find, I think, is it the ironmonger or the butcher's there, and he feels it's very below, this person. He's great, he's actually Pooter, Pooterish has become an English term for that sort of slightly sort of class-obsessed, sort of finicky type of Englishman. It is a masterpiece, though.
It is, yeah. And it just, you read it now, and it just speaks across the ages. Sometimes a lot of Victorian literature can be quite turgid. It's so fresh. And anyway, back to champagne. He's always ordering Jackson Frere.
Yeah.
So he's like, anytime there's anything to celebrate, he sends the boy out to the local grocery shop to buy a bottle of Jackson Frere.
And is that real champagne?
Well, there is Jackson, so it could be that,
Yeah.
or it could just be the name of the grocers. It could be their own label. But this was a thing in the 1860s because you had Gladstone's Single Bottle Act, which meant for the first time you could buy one bottle of wine at the shops.
Really? So before that, you couldn't do that. You had to buy a case.
You had to buy a case, yeah.
And would champagne have been relatively expensive? It was still, as you say, so it was a status thing. Was it that much more expensive? Let's celebrate with champagne, or was that just a brilliant marketing?
No, it was really expensive. It would have been the sort of price of Meursault, or I don't know if it would have been expensive as First Growth Claret, but it would have been up there with the most expensive French wines. But it wasn't just in Britain that you had this rising middle class. You also had it over in America. And there was this chap called Champagne Charlie, who he was from the Heidsick family. So his name was Charles Heidsick, which you may have heard of a Champagne family. Yeah. And what's interesting about the Heidsicks is, like a lot of Champagne families, they were German. So the Krugs were German, all those Heidsicks were German, the Mums were German.
Wow.
And the theory is that the reason is that the French who were making the champagne, they didn't speak any language apart from French, so they actually weren't very good at selling it. So all these kind of Germans who were very kind of cosmopolitan, they spoke English, they spoke German, they spoke Italian. They came into Epinay and Reims and these sort of places and basically showed the French how to sell their own wine, which is why you have so many champagne houses. Anyway, so he became so well known for selling champagne in the States that he became known as Champagne Charlie.
Wow. That's it's still a term now, isn't it? A bit of a champagne Charlie. It's a bit derogatory, I suppose. It's a bit of a spiv.
It's a bit like I thought it was like a hooray Henry.
Hooray Henry, champagne Charlie. I think my father used to say that, but that was a real person.
Yeah. And so this was one of the first times that a wine was sold with mass advertising. So you'd see posters on the underground. You would see it in magazines. All those wonderful Art Nouveau, swirly sort of Pommery, or saucy ladies sitting on champagne bottles.
Yes, and and also ashtrays used to get, and actually the original Toulouse-Lautrec used to. It didn't quite do the bit. Did he do any champagne?
It was one of the top sort of French artists, I think, did do some champagne stuff. It may have been Toulouse-Lautrec.
But he's certainly he's like chronicling or painting or drawing the louche underworld of Paris, isn't he? But
all those wonderful ones of sort of beautiful Edwardian ladies with their hair up, and then naughty Edwardian gentlemen with their top hats askew and moustaches and stuff.
Terry Thomas style.
Yes, Terry Thomas types. Right, shall we have a little break, have a little glass of Bucks Fizz, and then we will see you on the other side?
Let's do it. Well, welcome back to Intoxicating History, brought to you in association with Wild Market, the online farmers market. Now, champagne cocktails. A lot of people at Christmas have a Bucks Fizz, a glass of Bucks Fizz. Obviously it's orange juice and champagne, as far as I know. Give us the history of the Bucks Fizz.
Yes. I mean, I must say, if I have some champagne, the last thing I want to do is put some orange juice in it. If I've got some Cava or Prosecco, stick some orange juice in. But if I've got like a bottle of Roederer or Paul Roger, I'm going to have it neat. Maybe with some orange juice on the side.
But it's double acidity, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the acidity of even the freshest orange juice will completely obliterate any subtlety of the champagne. But people like it,
people do it.
It's healthy.
It's very healthy. It was created by a chap called Malachi McGarry. It's a wonderful name, isn't it? And he was the barman at Bucks. So Bucks was this club, or is this club, in London that was founded in 1919. So all these young men came back from the war and they just wanted to party.
Young Bucks,
They didn't want to hang around at White's or Boodle's, all these stuffy old man clubs. So they started their own club in Mayfair. And it had a bar. All the other clubs didn't have a bar. So it had an American-style bar. And this was all new. Cocktails were a new thing.
Yeah.
Chap in a white jacket, Mr. McGarry, shaking away cocktails. And it was, probably jazz on the phonograph, all this kind of stuff. I don't think women were allowed.
And buns being, because it was obviously the inspiration for Woodhouse's Drones, Bertie's club. And of course, people were throwing buns at each other and doing things like they bet each other if they could get round the room without touching the floor. And my favourite, which they all do in these clubs, is that they were so betting mad in these gents' clubs, especially Bucks. They would sit watching rain go down the window pane and bet which drop would get there first. And of course, you'd go in, entire fortunes would be lost in drunken betting. Very much the way of the upper classes in those days.
I think they have a version of indoor cricket also that they play at Bucks, which I think is, it's a sort of something that you are allowed to do in the club.
And Frida, that fantastic game around the snooker table where you just, billiard fives or Frida, where you're just hitting, you're pushing around, running around, and trying to knock the balls into each other. It's quite violent and quite drunken and quite fun, although your hands hurt like hell the next day.
Oh, that sounds good. Because I'm slightly off piece, but there's this brilliant book out at the moment by a chap called Seth Tevos, and it's about London clubland.
Yes, I bought it. Yes, it's absolutely brilliant. Hardback.
Yeah.
And it moves from everything from the sort of Oxford and Cambridge and the East India to Whites to Soho House to Blacks to whatever it is. It's quite dry as well. I quite like.
It's quite funny, and he has like the rules of Savile Snooker, which is a version of snooker or billiards perhaps, played at the Savile Club that's never been written down. It's just kept in the kind of the minds.
And it has
members.
a wonderful section, has a wonderful index, and one of the indexes is clubs in which Stephen Fry has taken cocaine. There's a list of about 9, which he's obviously admitted, so there's no thing. But it is a very good book, and you find out, because London is, so much came out of clubs. That's that's an idea for a new thing. Clubland and what came out of Clubland, because a lot did.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're off piece.
Including the Bucks Fizz. So Bucks Fizz is 2-to-1 ratio champagne to orange juice, so it's champagne heavy. But then there's also the mimosa.
See, what's the difference?
Equal parts. So mimosa is 1-to-1, whereas a Bucks Fizz has more champagne.
So even more Philistine.
Exactly. Well, it's the American version, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's it's slightly less good.
Yeah,
than a drink that isn't very good to start with.
Yeah.
But there are other much, much better champagne cocktails. So I'm not of the opinion that you should never mix champagne. I think, the Victorians were very happy to mix their wine.
Yeah.
Queen Victoria, her favourite drink, again, this is a bit disgusting, was half and half whiskey and claret.
Dear God almighty. I mean, that's what's called a heart starter.
Yeah, but there's a great film, and this is probably one of my favourite falling asleep in front of the telly films. So it's not actually a Christmas film. There's no Christmas in it, but you watch it at Christmas time, which is, of course, Casablanca.
Every shot, every line, everything is just, it's so famous it's misquoted, Play it again, Sam was never said in it, I thought you said it. But all that, it is such a beautiful, sad, brilliant film, isn't it? Peter Lorre is my favourite. Yes, anyway.
Yes, it's the obsequious. Yeah. So I'm sure everyone has seen it, but it's Humphrey Bogart, it's Ingrid Bergman, it's a kind of doomed love story set in Casablanca, and it's all set during the war. It's all set in a bar.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Cheers, but with the French resistance.
Rick's, isn't it? Is it
Rick's Bar,
Rick's
yeah.
Bar, yeah. It looks like quite fun, really seedy, and all sorts of secret agents and Nazis skipping around in there.
And there's an awful lot of champagne in it. So in the beginning, or not in the beginning, but when they flash back to Paris, where Rick and Elsa are having their sort of romance, Mum Cordon Rouge. So that is the champagne that they're drinking the whole time.
Yeah.
And he's always wearing those amazing double-breasted suits.
Yes.
Looking absolutely wonderful.
With the quite wide shoulders, that really beautiful cut. Because he's quite a small man, Bogart, and he's always had, rather like Tom Cruise, always had his sort of heels built up.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, and he was always, occasionally, he'd be standing on a box.
Right.
Because he didn't want to appear smaller. But he was a man of, a man of huge charisma and a brilliant actor. But that film is just, isn't it? So it's like, it's soporific in the best possible way. You want to fall asleep to Casablanca.
Yes. Well, I always start crying during Casablanca.
Yeah.
But so they drink Mum Cordon Rouge. But then when Victor Laszlo and Elsa, so he's the Prime Minister of Czechoslovakia, or was the Prime Minister of Czechoslovakia, and his wife, when they turn up at this at Rick's Bar looking to escape to America, order a champagne cocktail. So that would be sugar cube, Angostura bitters, little bit of brandy, top up with champagne.
I always, loved watching it, but I should have never tasted it.
It's absolutely delicious.
Is it?
Yeah, especially if you use a good brandy, if you use a nice cognac. It doesn't have to be the best, but just, one with a good bit of flavour. It doesn't totally overwhelm the champagne. Actually, the champagne works very nicely with the sweetness and the cognac. So that's a lovely cocktail. And then the most important one is when the French, the German officers come in, and we will have to get used to our place in the sun. I've totally misquoted that, haven't I?
Damn Nazis again.
Yeah. They order a French 75.
You see, so I'd love to walk into a bar and order a French 75. It sounds incredibly elegant. Is it one of those cocktails that sort of knock you out in one? What's in it?
Well, it sounds like a bit of a dog's dinner. So it's lemon juice, gin, sugar syrup, topped up with champagne. So it's basically a bit like a sort of Tom Collins, but with champagne. It sounds like a bit of a dog's dinner. It's actually incredibly delicious.
And would you serve it in a coupe sort of thing?
You could do it, or a flute. So either sort of champagne glass. And it's named after the 75mm gun that the French used during the First World War. So the ones that they were using to beat back the Boche at Verdun or something. So they had a cocktail that was named after this gun. So the fact that the German officers are ordering a cocktail named after a French gun, why is that? Is that a elaborate joke, or is it like a sort of, are they mocking the French for not being so...
I think it would have flown over their heads at that point. They were so drunk on power, the Nazis then, they're swaggering about in their sort of admittedly well-dressed way.
With their Hugo Boss suits.
Their Hugo Boss suits, yeah. I mean, but the end was coming, actually. When was it set, actually, Casablanca? It was sort of at the peak of the war.
1942, or I think it was made in 1942, so I think it was...
So 41, so very much then the Germans still had their swagger.
Yeah, they still had their swagger. The moment where the German captain, whose name completely escapes me, orders the French 75, that's the bit where the bit that makes me cry in the film. So the Germans, they start singing their awful Nazi songs, whatever they are, and Victor Laszlo strikes up the band, the Marseillaise. Honestly, I'm welling up just thinking about it.
It is, and it's sort of marinated in booze, isn't it? Like all those films of that time, there's a lot of very serious drinking going on, and they managed to keep it together.
And so the French, we're back to the French 75. It was invented by Harry McClune at Harry's Bar in Paris. Now, so Harry was, if I'm remembering this right, he was a refugee from Prohibition.
Now, is this the Harry's Bar that is now? It's sort of it is said to be, which I don't believe, but they claim it. They invented the Bloody Mary there.
Yes, yeah.
And it's that one. It's not Harry's Bar as we know it in Venice. They're rather overpriced, but yet does a very good martini and toasted cheese sandwich and a very good gratin as well, actually. But it's a Harry's Bar, and you go there. I remember going with some friends on pilgrimage, and it's now got lots of sort of college caps and pennants, because Americans love it. But it's rather unprepossessing. But this is this legendary bar, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a sort of place for American expats. So they were they had dollars that were worth a lot of money. You could buy like half of Paris for the price.
Was this after the liberation of Paris?
This was in the sort of 20s and 30s.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So they were escaping America because America had prohibition. Yeah. This bar had been founded by someone who was a bartender in the States. So soon as Prohibition came in, he moved to France. So you had all these cocktail bars that opened in Paris, London, by emigre Americans looking to, sell booze.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite nice. The Bloody Mary there is absolutely rubbish. It's just lots of white pepper and quite a lot of vodka. But anyway, Bloody Marys have we done Bloody Mary?
We have, and I'm a bit of a Bloody Mary skeptic. I just don't enjoy them very much.
You see, I don't. I think horseradish should never be in it. That's absolute heresy. But Clamato, which is a fantastic MSG-rich Canadian drink from Mott's, a Canadian brand, and it's clam juice and tomato. It's very thin. It would last a nuclear explosion. It's got so much MSG in it. It makes the best Bloody Mary.
Clam and juice. It sounds like it's already a bit of a soup.
Well, you've got it. It's very thin. I'll bring something, but it's got a sort of slight fish, but it's the umami basically, and it doesn't have that thick over sweetness that the other brands do, and that with an excess of lemon juice, a lot of Tabasco, and no horseradish. I mean, I love a bloody. I'm obsessed. My mouth's watering as I speak. No horseradish.
I tell you what I want now. Glass of Granny Sherry.
Right.
Should we have a glass?
Yeah, I'm absolutely. I haven't tried. So this has now been rebranded to make it look really cool.
So we can. This is Harvey's Bristol Cream, which is the.
And do you remember? It was always warm, and you got it in very small measures. It was never like you wouldn't. I mean that.
I'll give you a proper measure.
Jeez, that's a generous. Yeah. And look at the colour.
This is my aunt used to drink.
Yeah, it was always a sticky thing of it somewhere. Oh, that takes me back. I mean, it smells of sherry, but it's got a roundness and sweetness, hasn't it? That
it's very raisiny, toffee.
You know, that's not at all bad. It's like a sort of it's on the way to being a PX, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's got PX in it. It's a lot less sweet than I remember. I think they've reformulated it.
And it's got that almost pheno-y dryness at the back, hasn't it? This is a bit different from it? Must be, no?
I think this has changed. But should we talk a little bit about
course,
sherry?
Of course,
so sherry is the sort of ultimate Christmas wine, and it's the sort of thing that the sherry marketing board always kind of tell me off for this, but it's vicars, it's aunts.
Grandparents always used to have a glass of sherry in between about 4 different cocktails as well, but sherry was always a thing. We always. They might have been very cool and had the pheno. I doubt it. This is actually. I don't think this is a Bristol Cream. Remember, unless I'm being really buzzed.
It's nice, isn't it? It's sort of off dry rather than sweet. So what's really kind of interesting about Bristol Cream, or the sort of what we might as well call Granny Sherry, apologies to the sherry marketing board, is the British have always drunk a sherry that's very different to the sort of sherry that they drink in Jerez, with their gamba, salaplancha, and all that sort of stuff. So since Shakespeare's time, English sherry was. They did this process that was known as travail à l'anglaise, which means sort of English work. So worked for the English market. So they would take various sherries and stuff, and they would add PX to them, which is the very, very sweet stuff. Yeah. And they would make something that suits the climate, that suits, imagine winter in England before central heating.
Yeah, and even winter when we were young in England seemed to be colder than it is now. It must have been absolutely bone-chilling. The great freezes, we had a mini ice age, I think, in the 17th or 18th century with the Thames. They'd have the Christmas fair, the Michaelmas fair, what it was. And anyway, yes, it was much colder.
Yeah,
so.
and this is the sort of thing that when you have that quote from Falstaff, Henry IV, Part 2. If I had 1,000 sons, the first humane principle I would teach them should be to forswear thin potations and to addict themselves to sack.
Now, sack? What is sack?
So sack was what the English called sherry. But sack didn't just come from sherry. It came from, you'd have Canary sack, Malaga sack. It basically meant a kind of sweet wine from the south of Spain.
Okay. Have you ever been, I once went with... God, I can't remember. I better not say. I can't remember who it was. I went to the Feria down in Jerez. That was huge fun. Where you move from booth to booth, sort of eating and drinking and dancing, and things tend to get very out of hand by about 1 o'clock.
Yeah. No, I will tell you later about my experiences of the Feria. But I remember we went out for dinner at one in the evening.
Oh yeah, totally.
And then we were finished by about 3. And then it was like, well, and then we're going to go out. And it was like, I've been drinking sherry all day. I don't think I can go out. And they would say, no, you've got to come out. Anyway, didn't get a lot of work done the next day.
No,
but I was a guest of Gonzalez Bias, who are the sort of who make Tio Pepe.
I think we went with that as well. And again, tales of fellow food and drink writers all got very out of hand. Anyway,
and they've been there, as the name suggests, Gonzalez Bias. Gonzalez, Spanish name, Bias, British name, and they are a sort of Anglo-Spanish family, and they've been exporting wine to England for an awfully long time. And there's this wonderful letter that I saw that was in the archives from 1844. So the London agent was complaining about being sent a very pale wine, so basically Tio Pepe, a fino,
yes.
Pale, dry, sophisticated, delicious wine, and inquiring, where are my low-priced wines? So this was what a lot of this sherry that was exported to England. It would have been a blend of various things, sweetened with very, very sweet sherry called PX, Pedro Jimenez, and it wouldn't have been very much like the sort of stuff that was drunk in Spain. And then as now, you had kind of sherry hipsters complaining about British sherry. So there's this chap called Henry Visitelli, who is a Victorian author. We'll just wait for the Shepherd's Bush traffic to police to go past. So Henry Visitelli, who was a Victorian author, and he quoted a Victorian wine merchant, and this is what they would do to sherry for the British market. whenever I receive an order for the driest Amontillado, which is that very dry, very sophisticated aged sherry, I always put a gallon or more of dulce, meaning sweet sherry, into it before shipping it, because I know that if I send the wine in its natural state, I would be certain to have it returned. So the British, they might think that they like a dry sherry, but really what they like is a nice sweet sherry. And there was a chap called, this is a chap called Walter McGee, who wrote under the pen name Don Pedro Verdad, St. Peter Truth.
St. Peter Truth.
Complaining about how the proper sherry was adulterated. Dickens was another sherry purist. So he was always trying to get hold of sherry that hadn't been fortified or sweetened for the British market.
I mean, it is, for me, Mazanier and the Finos, they're the perfect aperitif, especially before the endlessly depressing dirge that is the traditional British Christmas lunch. I mean, but yes, ice cold, it prepares the palate, that sort of bone dryness. Well, bone dry, but it's a classic Christmas. But this, I'm very impressed with this. I think you've got a posh version of Crystal.
Yeah, well, maybe. But I mean, what's sort of fascinating about the kind of dry sherry, you know, like a Fino, is first of all, it tastes absolutely nothing like this at all. You know, it could be like from a totally different part of the world. They have almost nothing in common with each other. And also those dry sherries, which, you know, I will admit I love and I've got a real taste for. They are quite weird. You know, they are sort of, they're not fruity. They're not, if you're brought up on Sauvignon Blanc or Pinot Grigio, Fino sherry is really, really weird. And also, it's not, you know, we always say, the Spanish, they're more sophisticated than us. You don't find Fino sherry in Barcelona or Bilbao or
absolutely
Salamanca
not.
or something. It's only really drunk in
the south. Really,
in the south.
Yeah.
So it's not just the British who find proper dry sherry quite hard work. This kind of sherry, this sweet sherry, this is what would have been drunk in Holland, in France, in Belgium, you know, in Scandinavia, anywhere
really,
sort of a bit cold. It's great with mince pies and Christmas pudding and all that sort of stuff.
It's great with everything, sherry.
I was reading Victoria Moore last Christmas, and she was saying how much she loves sort of Bristol Cream and that kind of stuff, but at this time of year, because it kind of warms, it's like ready break.
Yeah.
You have a little sip, you're ready to take on the cold. And she said they should rename it mince pie wine. Just say this is, you know, and have it where you buy 6 packs of mince pies, get a bottle of sherry half price, something like that.
I think
because people love it.
It is. It's a great drink, and it gets you, nicely merry as well.
It's great because it warms you up, but it's not like whiskey or brandy or something where, you know, you can't do very much after this. You can go Christmas shopping. You could operate heavy machinery,
driving.
Yeah. Maybe some fencing.
Yes, obviously. But I do like those half bottles the sherry comes in, and they're relatively cheap. And if you go to the great Spanish restaurants, the Barrafinas, the Nieves ones, all those sort of feta. It's really good to share a half bottle between you. Just you don't have a martini, you have that instead.
Yeah, it's lovely.
It gets things off on the right note, I think.
I think we should have a little toast to Granny Sherry.
Yep, Granny Sherry. Much better than remembered.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
So I think we've got a surprise visitor coming. I put my copy of Wild Times down.
What? I mean,
good publication, that. Oh, who could that be?
Yay.
It's Santa!
Mother Christmas.
From Wild Market.
Ella from Wild Market.
Hello.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you both. How are you?
We are very well. We're very excited to see what you've got in your sack.
Let me get my goodies out for you. So we've got one leek for you.
See, leek's one of the great alliums, and these
leek for you.
You
These
wouldn't
smell
find
amazing.
them in the supermarket like this. They're scented. They're allium scented.
They smell like you've just picked them from the Welsh hills.
Oh, they come from Sussex, from a lovely
nearly,
biodynamic farmer. The next thing for your
my
Christmas
God,
parties,
Oh my
your
gosh.
charcut.
So what's in this?
These are it's pork that's been cured in Devon by an expert. It's all organic on their local farm.
Honestly, I love this kind of stuff, especially with a glass of dry sherry.
I don't have sherry, but I've got
Yeah, well, we've got plenty of
tiny
booze.
whiskies for you.
Tiny from Fielden.
Regen whiskey.
You know,
you so
Fielden
much.
is a rye whiskey producer, so it's like spicy American-style whiskey, all made from like sustainably sourced rye and corn, a heritage variety.
English whiskey.
I'm very on board with Fielden.
Next goodie, this is the most exciting. This is organic pork scratchings.
Oh, look at that.
Yum.
Look at those. Thank you. This gets better by the
From
moment.
our farmer producer Andrew.
Oh,
To add to the pork fest. To the sausage party.
yeah.
We love a
I've
sausage
got
party.
cocktail sausages for you both.
Oh,
Oh.
God, no, look at this. This
Yeah.
is a
You
great
go.
sausage. This is all
My
great.
youngest daughter, who doesn't eat anything, is finally onto sausages. So she is going to be very excited.
And you
about
could
this.
just wrap them up in your delicious bacon and 2 pigs and blankets. Look at this, flecked with herbs.
Honey mustard. Now these are disco scallops.
Oh my God, your seafood. We were just talking about this is amazing.
It's just so
Thank
fresh.
you.
It does taste like it's just come off the boat. It obviously has just come off the boat.
This come off the boat, but these have you heard of disco scallops before?
The ones that the lights
Yes.
attracted to lights. They come.
Yeah. So new method of catch. So the pots are put on the seabed, and then the LED lights inside the pot, and the scallops just sort of walk into the pot at
Because they
nighttime.
think there's a party
Yeah,
going on.
exactly. Do a stocking each. It doesn't look like a stocking. It looks
That's
like
a lovely
pot.
stocking.
That is
Yeah.
a very
Thank
nice.
you.
Thank you
What could
so
be in here?
much.
Yes. Something to maybe wash it all down with.
What could this be? Oh, do you know? I know this producer very, very well. This is Domaine Hugo.
Oh, we were just talking about that.
Yeah, in Wiltshire.
Yes.
And
Whereabouts
he
in
makes
Wiltshire?
it near Salisbury, actually in pretty much just outside Salisbury. And this is biodynamic English sparkling wine, handmade in Wiltshire by people who care. Love this.
Oh,
So
Ella,
thank you so much.
so
You're
much.
welcome.
This literally it's an embarrassment of riches, and everything is, wild is the future.
Enjoy.
Thanks,
Thank
Santa.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.
Bye. Merry
Bye.
Christmas.
Bye.
Thank you so much to our sponsors, Wild Market. That's wild, WYLDE .market on the internet.
That's it.
So back to the show. Okay, we're back for our Christmas special, brought to you by the good people at Wild Market.
Wonderful wine market. And a discussion of Christmas. We've done sherry, we've done champagne. Now, there's one drink that I love. I know it's not, and I know that most people I know love. I don't even have a sweet teeth. It is the drink that is Baileys. Baileys is like eating melted sweets. I think that's the point where, I once went through a bottle by myself a long time ago. I will never do that again. The hangover was so gopping because there's so much sugar in there. But Baileys is what? It's an Irish cream. Was that made up entirely? Is this a new spirit? What is it?
It was made. It was completely made up. So it dates back to the 1970s, and a chap called Tom Jago, who died recently, but he was the head of innovation and development at IDV, International Distillers and Vintners. So this was a company that became Diageo at some point. And a part of the company was Gilbey's of Ireland. So Gilbey's are a wine merchant, gin producer.
One of your is a guy called Gilbey's with the long hair.
Yeah, Tom Gilbey. Yeah,
he's quite fun. I read your review of the books and the Spectator, which was fantastic. So I quite like his sort of rudeness about Californian mass wines, and so he is the latest in the long line
he's
of
a
Gilbey's.
Gilbey. So there was an Irish outpost of Gilbey's. In fact, if you ever have Redbreast whiskey, which is probably the best Irish whiskey, it was made for Gilbey's of Ireland.
Wow.
So they used to buy it from, I think it was Jameson or one of the big Dublin distillers, and then they would age it in their cellars and sell it as a brand, Redbreast. And so your Gilbey's of Ireland at this point were owned by IDV, and they had the Irish government had offered tax incentives for new products. So they were desperately looking for a new Irish drink. And they went to Tom Jago and said, here's some money, blank piece of paper. And Tom handed it over to these two consultants. So one of them was called Hugh Seymour Davis, and the other one was a chap called David Gluckman. And I've got David Gluckman's book here. and he was a drinks developer.
Called That Shit Will Never Sell.
That Shit Will Never Sell.
That's a fantastic
it's
name.
such a funny book.
Is it? Oh God, here I go. Another book needed to buy after talking to you. Is it really good?
It's really good. He also invented things like Le Piador. Do you remember the
Pied de chocolat? Was it the Pied d'Or?
It was a sort of a wine that was aimed at people who didn't really like wine.
Yeah.
The adverts.
I remember
Le
the adverts.
Français adore Le Piador.
Yeah.
And what was that drink called? Aqua Libra. So it was like a
Yuppie. That was an absolute distillation of the first time where Aqua Libra in glass bottle. It was very nice, actually. I really liked it. But the fact that people would spend money that you usually spend on beer on a soft drink. It was a very yuppie, posh soft drink. And it was about sort of £2 a bottle. It was very expensive. But my father bought it back one day and we thought it was the most glamorous thing we'd ever come across. I still love it.
ahead of its time, I think. And so Gluckman and Seymour Davis were tasked by Jago with creating this new drink. And Gluckman had been working, one of his previous clients was Kerrygold.
Okay, the butter.
The butter. So Ireland had been making all this butter and it had gone into, not Anchor, because Anchor comes from New Zealand, but, it had gone into Sainsbury's butter. And they came up with the idea of having a brand that played on, lush Irish fields and green grass and cows and all these kind of lovely sort of Irish images. Getting hungry just thinking about it.
Yeah.
And Gluckman, in his book, thought, why don't we do this with alcohol? Why don't we play on Ireland's strengths as a dairy producer? And he thought, what other things is it famous for? Whiskey. There was also a lot of Irish whiskey around at the time, which nobody really wanted. Irish whiskey was really struggling at the time. And so what they did in 1973 was they mixed Jamesons with cream, and it tasted absolutely revolting. And so they had a little play, and then they added sugar and chocolate powder. Cadbury's drinking chocolate powder.
Yeah.
And it tasted quite nice. And so they made a prototype of Bailey's in their kitchen, cream, Jameson, Cadbury's chocolate powder, lots of sugar. And what Gluckman thought was very clever about it was even though it was only 25%, it tasted very, very rich and strong. So it was as satisfying as having whiskey or something.
Yeah.
But there was less alcohol in, so it would attract a lot less tax. So you could sell something a lot cheaper, but it would have the sort of image and the sort of satisfying feel of a proper spirit.
And it is still relatively cheap. I think it's still under 15 quid or not. Maybe I haven't bought it for a while. It is very, very moorish, but it would obviously use UHT milk, obviously, to sit for shelf life.
Well, this is the thing is they sent it to the Gilbey's Research Laboratory at Harlow, in Essex, where there was a chap called Mac McPherson, whose job it was to turn it into a stable drink that could sit on the shelf. So he'd obviously been a UHT.
Yeah.
I don't know what else they put in it, but lots of stuff. It's not just cream and sugar and whiskey and chocolate anymore. And then they needed a name. So what did they do? There was a restaurant that they went to in Soho called Bailey's, and they were like, that'll do. And so it was all just, it was a very different world, because nowadays that would go through 100 focus groups you'd have kind of computers and AI and, but then it was just, you had a very small team. They made it in the kitchen. We'll call it Bailey's. They took it to Ireland. The Irish were like, yeah, give it a go. And they went with it. And
Bailey's has that nice softness about it. Bailey's Irish cream, it rolls off the tongue. It's very it's very sort of rounded, and just like the drink, it appeals to people who don't like drink, who want to basically eat, a melted toffee stroke fudge stroke. And have you seen all the limited editions they do around Christmas? You get sort of all sorts of, as ever, the inevitable salted caramel always sort of rears its ugly head. The mint, the orange, the chocolate orange, but really the original. And also there's Audi and Lidl do their versions, don't they? Don't quite hit the spot, but they are half the price.
Yes. It's one of those ones that sort of, I think a lot of people in the drinks trade were and still are very, very sniffy about it. So there's a great story about Gluckman, and he went to America to to visit this importer called Abe Rosenberg. And this chap, he knew his booze, Rosenberg. He'd made J&B America's best-selling scotch. And Rosenberg, you can imagine him as this kind of grizzled old New Yorker.
Yeah.
Had one sip of the Baileys and went, that shit will never sell. That's the title of the book. And he had a similar story. He went to Chicago and he poured it for this chap who owned a chain of liquor stores in the Midwest. And it was an early version. And he poured it out and it was all lumpy because it got a bit funny. And the chap just looked at him and was like, and a lot of people, because a lot of people in the IDV were wine people. They like Burgundy and Roederer. And
so they looked down on this sort of Johnny come lately.
So they thought it was a joke. And it just took off because people really, really liked it.
And then you're thinking about all the cocktails, and I know that these were apparently originally 80s, things like the B-52, Baby Guinness. I had Mudslide, White Russian, of course, made great by Jeff Bridges and the dude in The Big Lebowski. This little stoner drinking his White Russian. Milk, I love milk-based cocktails. I think they're fantastic. And of course, we talk about Partridge. Ladyboy.
Yeah.
Alan's obsession with ladyboys. He's always been caught watching ladyboy porn and stuff like that.
It's one episode, isn't it? And it's when it's making the canal boat.
It's with Simon Pegg,
right? Yeah,
and Graham Lynham, who since sort of got a little bit controversial. Do you remember the farmers put a cow on him at the end? They drop a cow.
And what is it? So he invents this cocktail, and it's a pint of lager, a gin and tonic, and a Bailey's chaser.
And he gets so drunk. Do you remember? He has one of the whole round, falls down. Oh, ladyboy. But it is, I think that Bailey, and the Baby Guinness. Have you ever had that where you have Bailey's and it looks like a Guinness? I can't remember. It's Kahlua, I think.
Yeah, it's Kahlua with Bailey. Because this is the great thing about Bailey's, because it's so viscous. It layers things. So you can have those cocktails.
So the B-52. I remember in my sort of early drinking days, sort of 15, 16. It was shots, and the B-52 I think had some ghastly sweet thing as well. Got you pretty drunk as well, I seem to remember. Mudslide. This reminds me of a restaurant called Sweeney Todd in Bath in the early 90s, late 80s. All these very sweet cocktails, the one for the ladies.
Yeah. These remind me of going on holiday with my parents to Menorca. My brother and I were just at sort of drinking age.
Yeah.
We'd go out in the evenings and have these horrible drinks like B-52s, pint of lager, B-52s. Well, I can't even remember what's in a B-52.
No, I can't remember.
But it's definitely Baileys, and it curdles, doesn't it? I think it's like something, and you pour the Baileys in, and it sort of curdles, and then it turns into the consistency of snot, basically.
Yeah.
We're going to drink next, which I think might be even sweeter, creamier, even more Christmassy than Baileys. It is, of course, the mighty eggnog.
Now, only Christmassy if you're an American, probably like me, if you grew up as a sort of film freak and watching all these Christmas Christmas movies. And Gremlins was this film. It was what was it, mid-80s, and it was a 15, and it was a film I was so obsessed by seeing. And obviously I was like 9 or 10, and it was the first pirate video that somehow my father or mother got hold of it, and we watched it. It was filmed in a cinema with people.
Your father was buying pirate.
Well, I think my father wouldn't have had a clue what a pirate video. It might have been my mother. Actually, I don't think it was my mother. I think it might have been.
This one's going to be in the papers.
I think it might have been my nanny.
Yeah.
Actually, it was definitely my nanny. But we watched it, and I was absolutely outraged. And it was actually Gremlins was so dark and so brilliant about these little furry mogwai, who, if you feed them after midnight, they turn into absolute bastard little things that kill dogs and go mad. It was very, very dark, and it was the whole reason Gremlins, a Christmas film and a very dark Christmas film, very brilliant one. Joe Dante and all the rest of it. Steven Spielberg produced it. But it was the first movie that was a PG-13 because it was seen as too violent for children, So there's new rating between a G in America and an R, PG-13, because it was a 15 here, and it was very, very dark. Anyway, Sheriff Frank drinks a lot of eggnog, like in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, like in Bad Santa. Every Christmas film has bloody eggnog in it. Does Trading Places have it? The great Christmas.
Yeah, Trading Places. There is an eggnog moment.
Is that when Dan Aykroyd gets wasted when he goes to
the eggnog moment is when he's cleaning. He has discovered that the Dukes have double crossed him, and he's cleaning his shotguns. And then Denham Elliott turns up with some restorative eggnog. Should we just talk about what exactly eggnog
is?
Is?
I've never had it. I feel. unfulfilled that
So
I have not had
eggnog
eggnog.
is a very ancient drink. So it dates back to medieval times. So in oldie England, you would have had a drink like a posset or something, which would have been curdled milk, thickened with eggs. They'd stick some sack in there, some sweet sherry, something like this, and it would have been a kind of wonderful winter warmer. And the nog, there's some debate about the nog because some people say it's a wooden drinking cup, like a noggin, like Noggin the Nog. Remember Noggin the Nog?
Yes, Noggin the Nog. Yes, great children's character. Yeah.
And but the other thing is, which I think is much more fun, is apparently if you nogged a drink, it meant that you put a red hot poker in it. So you go to the bar,
Like Piers Gaveston in Evans.
not like that. Come on, put me off my eggnog now. So you'd go to the bar and you'd order a drink, a sort of spiced ale or something, and the bartender would be, would you like it nogged, sir? And he'd pull out a red hot poker, put it in your drink. They didn't have microwaves. It would get very hot very, very quickly. Everything would cook. Eggnog.
Fantastic.
But while it was a sort of medieval speciality, and we moved on to sherry and port and far more sophisticated drinks, but the Americans got massively into it. And I think it's because it was the land of plenty. They had all that space for cows so that you could have cheap dairy products. They got very good at, it wasn't quite battery farming, but you had cheap eggs, that kind of stuff. Huge farms in the Midwest.
Farming on a massive level, yeah.
Turning out cheap, all this kind of stuff. They had lots and lots of rum. And the Americans got really into eggnog. So there's this wonderful cocktail book by David A. Embry called The Fine Art of Mixing Drinks. And it has a whole chapter on nogs. So not just eggnog, but sort of port nog, sherry nog, nog in the nog.
And does it have advocaat in it?
Well, advocaat is something slightly different. Advocaat is basically like an alcoholic custard that you buy, ready-made.
So almost like a proto Irish cream.
It is a bit, yeah. So it's advocaat, which is the Dutch for lawyer. And I don't quite know, maybe lawyers used to drink a lot of alcoholic custard in the Netherlands?
Yes, I mean, you never know what goes on in the Netherlands, but yes. Like an avocado, so that's something similar but different. It doesn't go in
Yeah, it's a similar sort of thing. And it was very popular in England in the 70s, where it was mixed with lemonade, like whites. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it crops up in Adrian Mole. I think he's always having too many snowballs at Christmas.
Is he? With lusting after Pandora. I love Adrian Mole. Burt Baxter and what is he? Yeah. Anyway, sorry. They're making a new Adrian Mole. They're remaking it.
It's going to be awful, isn't it?
Well, he's just brilliant. Big and bouncy. Do you remember his favourite magazine? Anyway.
So eggnog was the sort of drink, first of all, of colonial America, but also, post-independence America. George Washington was apparently a big eggnog fan. He had his own whiskey distillery at Mount Vernon.
As you do, yeah. He was a great food man. Mount Vernon had these amazing gardens, didn't he? He grew everything. He was quite serious, quite a sort of serious eater and serious drinker.
So there's a recipe from, again, this may not actually be George Washington's recipe. It came from a book called Christmas with the Washingtons by Olive Bailey, but it's attributed to George Washington. And his eggnog contained brandy, whiskey, dark rum, and sherry.
Dear God.
Alongside milk, cream, eggs, and spices.
That would knock you down in moments.
So this is the kind of thing that Americans consume in large amounts during the holiday period. And also you have to remember that Americans aren't generally regular drinkers. This is huge generalization, but they're not like us, we drink every day and stuff.
Yeah.
For a lot of Americans, the holiday period is the sort of time when they drink. And they drink this drink that's like half spirits, but tastes like a sort of pudding, So this is why it's so lethal.
And that is part, we go back to the Baileys, we go back to the people who don't like, when you're a child and you didn't really like the taste of alcohol, you always like the sweet things, the Baileys, I suppose the avocat. It's a good it's a good sort of gateway drug into getting you into drinking. Make it sweet, make it like a child's drink and hook them early.
And that's why it has this sort of iconic role in American Christmas films, like probably most notably National Lampoon's Christmas.
Which is actually a great, European Vacation dips a bit. Vacation, obviously, the original masterpiece. Christmas is really, really good because Clark Griswold at Chevy Chase is so obsessed with creating the perfect Christmas, all the lights and the stuff, and it all goes wrong as ever. But, of course, eggnog is American Christmas. It's family, it's the fire, it's Santa Claus. It is everything. A Christmas Vacation, well worth watching, by the way. So it's better than European Vacation that has Mel Smith and Eric Idle, who says sorry, knocked off his bike, and Christy Turlington, which obviously was, which is a great thing. Not Christy Turlington, sorry. I will remember. Married to Billy Joel. Who was that one? Someone will say when she
Linda
died.
Evangelista.
No, it was before that. It was sort of mid-80s. But anyway, Christy Brinkley. Anyway, but yes, it's a great Christmas one. Then if you want to go the dark side, if you want to really, I remember watching my children, they were much younger, a movie called Bad Santa with Billy Bob Thornton. It's a sort of hard 18. It's absolute filth. He's a sort of drinking, smoking, coke snorting sort of bad man. But it does have a nice sort of moral heart. Eggnog's in that. And of course, back to I was just thinking Die Hard, which people say is not a Christmas movie. Of course it's a Christmas movie, Die Hard. But all I can remember is them at the Nakatomi Plaza drinking champagne, because they're very yuppie at that point, with Hans Gruber, with the great villain of all time.
And they have that kind of slimy coke snorting
yes,
lawyer.
Yes, who's trying it on with McLean's wife, do you remember?
Yeah.
Who gets shot.
And I think they're drinking like upmarket Japanese whiskey. So this
of course,
was when...
Suntory, because it's Nakatomi Plaza, of course. Yeah. I had to get in that, and just to put in my piece that Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
Of course. Then the one that I remember from Eggnog, and to which I'm not very good on American Christmas films, but is there's an episode of The Simpsons where Homer stocks his entire fridge with eggnog.
Yeah.
And Marge complains about it. And he goes, "'Tis the season, Marge. We've only got 30 sweet noggy days. Then the government takes it away again." And so the whole family basically have nothing but eggnog for the entire Christmas season. The thing about eggnog is, it can get out of hand. So we've seen how, Griswold in National Lampoon, he has that rant. Yeah. Homer becomes addicted to eggnog. There is this story, which is kind of sort of unbelievable, about when the eggnog hit the fan at West Point, which is American version of Sandhurst, in that they probably wouldn't like the comparison, in 1826. So there was a chap called, wonderful American name, Colonel Sylvanus Thayer, and he was a staunch disciplinarian. I kind of imagine him as like the bad policeman out of Police Academy. Or something,
and he'd be played by like Robert Duvall or something like that. Yeah,
exactly. So he decided that there was going to be no alcohol, no dancing, no profanity, nothing at Christmas. A bit like, I was going to say a bit like Oliver Cromwell, but Oliver Cromwell was actually quite fun. Just we talked about it. He liked to drink. He got drunk at his daughter's wedding.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he was nothing. He was more like Robert Duvall than Oliver Cromwell.
And he was not Commandant Lassard in Police Academy, but the baddie.
Yeah,
the baddie in Animal House. The rector, whatever it was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The principal or whatever.
The principal, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so the cadets were like, we're not having any of this. It's Christmas at West Point. So they smuggled in eggnog, the ingredients to make eggnog, apparently in a hollowed out log. And so on Christmas Eve, they were meant to be totally dry, but the dormitories, the North and South barracks, and this is what our producers have written, had become ticking cream and gunpowder time bombs, which is quite exciting.
Yeah.
So they mix their eggnog with the whiskey and the rum and the brandy and the sherry and stuff, and things get really out of control. So the cadets are toasting to liberty, democracy, and Thayer be damned. And so it all gets quite noisy. And then Lieutenant William Thornton comes in to investigate. And he finds a full bacchanalia. Drunken cadets fighting. There were people jousting with pokers and things like that, smashing beds, smashing crockery. Someone fired a pistol. Basically, they got off their heads on eggnog and trashed the place.
So there was an excess of eggnog. What happened to these poor cadets?
Well, you'd think, if it was the British Army at the time, imagine like they'd all been shot, wouldn't they? But actually, being kind of like relaxed Americans, 20 were court-martialed, quite a few of them were expelled, and one of the people involved was no less a figure than Jefferson Davis, who became president of the short-lived Confederacy. Oh. He was involved, but he escaped serious punishment, so he weaseled his way out of that one. So it's an example of what happens when you have too much eggnog.
Too much eggnog is, a great American drink that I think we must try. I'm going to try it at Christmas, and obviously I'm not going to, turn into some sort of revolution. But I think it's worth a go. After all, it's so soaked in the cultural history of American movies and the rest of it that I feel that it would be rude not to try it. Anyway, Christmas, it is coming. Have a very, very happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. And
we'll be returning in the new year with our very own Wet January. 3 more episodes of Intoxicating History.
Wet January, how wonderful. Intoxicating History is brought to you in association with Wild Market, the online farmers market. The show is executive produced by Melanie Jappi and Jago Lee and is a Telltale Industries production.